right. First time going live here, and basically I wanted to jump on and give everyone a chance to shoot some questions over, do a little Q&A for about anything that's regarding guitar, basically. So welcome if you're here. I got a couple questions that were actually sent over already, but if you guys, again, want to just throw some questions in the chat window, I'll try to get to them as quick as I can. So let's see, the first one somebody sent was, what are the most essential chords for beginners to learn first? That's a really great one, actually. I did a video on our online guitar course all about this, and I said these are like the first 4 chords that you should learn, I think, as a beginner, because they're in so many songs. And then you could also, when you put a capo on, transpose a ton of songs this as much, because there's so many songs that use this progression of order of chords. So I would say by far, to answer that question, it is definitely the G major, the E minor, the C, and the D. That would be the top 4 chords that I would really, really master. You can get through a ton of songs with those 4 particular chords. Not to mention, when you use those 4 chords, there's a lot of like pivot points in there, meaning that you can keep one finger down as you switch to those chords. So when you go to like G and the song goes to E minor, you could keep your pointer finger down to do that, what I call pivot finger on there. So there's some secret kind of switches within here that can make things a lot quicker. Not to mention when there's an E minor, you can actually pivot to a C off that middle finger as well. So there's a lot of like shortcuts between those chords. So physically, I think they're chords that work together really good. They are ones that are in all the same key. And actually, again, when it comes to a lot of different songs, you're going to find those chords. I mean, when you put a capo on, you could pretty much play almost any song with those 4 particular chords actually on that too. So, cool. Yeah, let's see. Another question here. Oh, this is a good one. How should you properly hold your guitar? Yeah, this is great for beginners. I feel like when I first start working with students, one of the things that they do is they tend to lean back kind of to see their fingers, like this, and it lays the guitar flat, which makes sense. When you're first learning guitar, you have to kind of look down at your fingers, and it's all, you want to see where you're putting your strings on and everything. But when you actually lean back like this, you're twisting that wrist completely around to where you can't get the fingertips. So the awkwardness that students have when they're looking like this is really bad. So it's okay to, I think, first find where your fingers go, but then put that guitar nice and straight up and down like this. The straighter your guitar is all the way across, the more you could see that I can get like a great leverage point of my fingers to be like fingertips like that. So the lean back thing like this and then try to strum it is really rough on being able to get good fingertip posture on that one. So yeah, that's a great one actually. Let's see another one here. Let's see. Songs, treble. Oh, that's a great one. How's it going, Tim? Yeah, so written lyrics to about 20 songs and having trouble putting music to them. So yeah, that's, when it comes to songwriting, there's a couple tricks that I would use into putting them to music. Number one is just finding a chord progression that the chords work together all in the same key. So like I was just kind of saying in that, a great way to start is using those 4 chords, G, E minor, C, and D, and putting them in an order that you might feel sounds good together in those ones, because those are all in the same key. So that's going to make the song sound like cohesive together. When it comes to lyrics and being able to start singing them, most of your most famous vocal lines, they are singing tones that are within those chords. So, let's just say, for example, you chose this progression of G to E minor, C to D. So when you got your G here, and let's say the word that you have, the first lyric you made is like, I don't know, sunshine or something like that. You could find a note that's in your range in the G chord to start singing that. Sun, sun, sunshine. And so you can kind of get a pitch going that matches that chord. And then when you change to the next chord, you could find a pitch that's in that one as well. sunshine, sunshine. And you could find those. And then the notes you put in between can actually be like passing notes for that melody as well. So it's all about kind of finding a good pitch for your starting melody and trying to go off and running from there. But a lot of great songs are, written in this way that you have a set of lyrics and you're trying to squeeze them into a chord progression. So my advice would be to definitely just put 4 chords together first. Those ones would be great. And then find a note that's within there to start your lyrics off on. Maybe you have a lower voice or a higher voice. Again, just choose each one. Sun, sun, sun. And then start to see where your melody takes you on that. So it's a little bit of just finding that starting thing, that spark, and then being able to see if you can create the rest of your lyrics on there. But that's where I would start. And generally organize your lyrics. I would say lastly, organize your lyrics into sections, because most of your, great songs are going to have a verse, a chorus, and maybe a bridge. So if you know what your verses are and you know what your choruses are, that's also great too to be able to organize the format of that. But yeah, thanks for the question. What's up, Danny? Danny, who's in the chat here, he does all the back-end work here on the YouTube videos. Is a big part of this whole channel as well. So, yeah, welcome. All right, let's see. Another question here. Well, that's a good one. How do I transition smoothly between my chords? This is always a big one for beginners, is this smooth transition between chords. When you're first learning guitar, it is such a difficult thing to do. Our human fingers, they're not meant to contort and balance on 6 wires, so we really have to condition them, and it's a really kind of painful thing, I think, in the beginning to have that thing flowing and playing fast, and when you see others do it, you're like, how is this happening? There's definitely 3, I would say, tricks that I do to help my students transition chords smoothly. The first one is the thing I just mentioned earlier in the song, in the broadcast here about the GD minor, is I look for these pivot fingers. So when you're trying to change chords smoothly, using a pivot finger can be really helpful because one can stay down. Not all the chords have this opportunity to keep a pivot finger down, but always look for them. I mean, you could have a C chord down, and then the song goes to an A minor, but I see students pick everything up and drop everything down in the A minor when really 2 of the fingers that are in an A minor are also in the C. So just pulling your ring finger over is all you need to do. You could keep 2 down. So it's really about just, first of all, checking out your chord progression you're working on and looking for those pivot fingers, and it can really help the speed of your transition and making that smoother on that. The second thing is, I'm going to watch students that when you're first learning chords and really lifting up all their fingers real high to switch to the next one. And it's probably from just when you first learn a chord, you're like dropping your fingers down and figuring it out. But when you see me switching chords smoothly and quickly, I kind of crawl across the strings. I keep my fingers very close to the strings. So if I'm singing a song or playing, you don't see my fingers going up in the air like really far away like that. So it seems kind of silly that it's kind of common sense to do that, but I'm literally crawling to where I'm almost still touching the strings as I'm doing that. So staying really close to them is a really big one. I think that it's a really helpful thing when you're able to keep those fingers close to it. And then third thing is literally, I think when you're building a chord, we ultimately want to build the chord when you just can drop all your fingers at once. So you see me go to like a C chord, it's just like it just drops. But I really think what can help you transition smoother is to start the habit of building your chords from the thicker strings to the higher, bass to the high stuff. Most of your strumming is going to be going down. So if you're able to go like this and hit a G, you can kind of see I hit this G and then I strummed and then got the rest of the chord at that point. If you're building a chord from the high pinky and like that, you're going to have to wait till everything's down to strum it. So you're losing that time. So I would say that's the 3 biggest things to help smooth transitions. It's definitely pivot fingers, keeping the fingers close to the strings as you transition, and then again, really thinking about all those as that goes. But yeah, I think those will help you trans things a lot smoother on that as that goes. Oh, thanks, Danny. This is my first time on live, you guys. So my first little donation there from Danny. Thanks, bud. All right. This is a good one too. What strumming patterns do you recommend for beginners? Yeah, this is huge. When you're first starting to play songs and strum your guitar, we usually just get like one strum maybe, and you have enough time to get to the next chord and everything. But I would say, for a beginner, probably the best strumming pattern to do is just start with the ones that have, 4 downs, a measure like that. So if I'm on a C chord and it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, I just try to get 4 of your downbeat quarter note strums in there is where the all begins. The next level up to that is to try to get some 8th note strums in there. And all that means is that we get a up strum when your foot's in the air, meaning like when you're tapping your foot to the beat of whatever song you're playing, when the foot goes in the air, that's on an upbeat or an and beat, and that you can get as an 8th note. So a great one to practice if you're a beginner is just going to be tapping your foot with down, down, and I would do this one, down, up, down. That way you're getting like 1, 2, 3, and 4. That's a great one. If you have a metronome, that's really the great way to get your timing a lot better too, is to work along with those clicks, like click, 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 click. That one up will actually be between the beat as well. So that's a great one to start down because, most of the strumming patterns that you're going to end up doing, it's a series of downs and ups like that. So to start just kind of conditioning the downs and then down, down on that one. That's a great one to start on beginners. You could also move that to the second beat. So you can go down, 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 and then repeat that. Down, down, down. And I think that's a great way to start with it. The one that I'll tell you is the one that you want to get, though, and I made a video about this as well, the kind of the holy grail of all strumming patterns should definitely be the down, down, up, down, up. That one is in every song, fits in everything. So if you're a beginner, start with those other ones that I gave you, but that's the one you want to get to. Down, down, up, down, up. It's the famous one there. All right, let's see what else we got here. Oh, this is Here, it's all natural. It's only salt water and sun when I can. I can't reveal my hair secrets. Let's see here. Okay, this one's a good one. Someone said, can you explain the importance of warm-up exercises? Well, you know what? It's kind of like, I think, even athletes, when you're warming up for a game or, trying to get yourself conditioned for something. I kind of call it cross-training. We think about learning songs of different difficulty, and we say, I can't learn that song yet. It's too hard. And I think, is it the song's too hard, or is maybe my fingers aren't ready yet? And how can we build those fingers quicker so we can play all those songs we want to? So finger exercises, I think, play a really big role in building the dexterity, and I think the most important is this finger independence, so that each finger can do what you want it to. You'll notice when you're starting out with the guitar, your fingers a lot of times will end up just kind of wanting to work together and move on one, but to have them all independent is huge. So dexterity and independence. So one of the biggest exercises that I do all the time to enhance it, and I think when I first learned this one, I felt like I just sped up in my growth of playing when I started doing this one every day. It was really hard at first, but once it became like a daily routine, I felt like I could play anything, actually. So this one simple exercise is definitely one that I recommend, and it's basically something where I always sit all my 4 fingers on the G string, 7th fret. So I'm like 4, 5, 6, 7, and I sit on this G string here. The pointer finger is going to start the exercise out with going on the A string 4th fret to the B string 4th fret. And I just go back and forth without moving these 3 fingers at all. So just the pointer does the work. This is that independence thing I was kind of saying, because your fingers are going to want to go with with the other ones there. So to build this, it really takes a lot of concentration. And I'm always telling my students, you don't want to do any more than like 30 seconds a finger or a minute a finger tops. It's not about doing this thing for hours, but just slowly building up the independence. And that word slow is huge too, like really taking it slow. This is not a rushed exercise, but to move that finger. Then when you're done with the pointer finger, you go to the middle finger and do that on the 5th fret of the A string back and forth. And then you start really feeling your fingers wanting to pull with that and go along with it. But you could see how independent that middle finger's going. And this one's always the real tough one, the ring finger, as that goes back and forth. That one was a struggle at first. And then, of course, everyone's favorite, the pinky, always the weakest one as well on that. So that's one that even before shows, when I play them now, I'm always using that one to warm my fingers up, just a minute each. So in 4 minutes, you can have these 4 fingers really getting a lot stronger and getting that independence. So I think, again, finger exercises can be the cross-training to be able to finally play all those songs that you like. If you're just kind of playing, songs all the time, might get stuck in that rut of, I'm really great at changing these certain chords all the time, but I can't do this. Well, that can't usually comes down to maybe that finger strength and dexterity. But if you're doing that every day and then a song comes your way, I think a lot of times you can be like, wait, I could do this all of a sudden. So definitely add that to your practice routine. I think that's really a huge thing that people miss out on, because you want to play songs. We all do, but we want to be able to play any of them is the idea. Cool. Let me scroll down. Oh, this is cool. Let's see. It says, how can I add dynamics to my playing? This is, dynamics, this is really interesting. Dynamics are a thing that I could tell an amateur guitar player from a pro based on dynamics. I think this is a huge one that we miss out on a lot as guitar players. Dynamics to me are, the louds and quiets, the peaks and valley of your playing, the crescendos of your playing means like getting gradually louder or gradually softer. This is such a huge component to playing that transfers kind of the energy of the song to the listener. So when you're playing a song and everything's just the same volume, and it's just that same volume, but if I'm able to that verse comes in a little quieter, grow into that pre-chorus or something. So that control is a really big thing to do, and it seems easier, harder than it really is. And I feel like, to me, it first starts with the awareness of it, just to be able to start playing quiet. But I have my students practice this with whether they're doing improvising scales or whatnot, because they might be improvising the same thing, everything being same volume as opposed to. Really expressing that sound. It's for the awareness of it. And then what I have them do as a practice on it is I try to make them be very dramatic on it. Like, go as quiet as you possibly can play, and then grow to where you can play as loud as you possibly can play. So just really feel those differences of it. And it's funny because sometimes I'll be listening to them and I'm like, you can go quieter than that, or you could actually play probably louder than that. So they think they're doing it, but not really. So it's a great practice to just, go through a chord progression of just trying to be feather, whisper, quiet, just to see how that kind of feels. And try those crescendos. And it just adds that expressiveness to your playing. I love that when I'm able to play to a crowd, and especially like a bigger crowd, and be able to, there's a couple spots that I have some solos that are pretty drawn out and long. And one of my favorite things to do with that is to really kind of milk those dynamics with the audience and really have them kind of feel that. So even though the room's kind of packed, So dynamics are huge to do, and it really makes everyone kind of listen. It's almost like a good, speech or speaker is, they're going to have their moments that they're really speaking like strong and loud at you. Then sometimes they'll bring it down to more of a kind of like a quieter whisper, and it makes you kind of listen more actually, unless it all being the same volume on that. So your playing is actually the same way with that. So it's something beginners can do right away. Again, it's not something that's too difficult to do. It's more about, again, that awareness of it first on it. So. All right. Anybody recognize that one? Somebody wrote in a question about what songs they could practice to use as different exercises. And actually, it's funny that's one of my favorite. That's "Over the Hills and Far Away" by Zeppelin. That one, if you want to practice your hammer-ons and pull-offs, that's the one to do it on, because that whole beginning is all about that. That was one I learned when I was first picking up the guitar, actually, and I didn't understand what those pull-offs were, and they never were as loud as actually picking it. It was always those are dynamics that I didn't want happening. I wanted to actually hear my pull-offs and hammer-ons with that one. So that was a great one to practice. There is certain songs that I think that even I use with my students that I make sure that I choose them for the reason of their techniques actually on it. And that's definitely one that helps the hammer-on pull-off. So if you're looking to learn Over Those and Far Away, that will strengthen those for sure. Another great one you could actually add into the equation is Wish You Were Here by Pink Floyd. That's another great one that adds hammer-ons in there to practice them. When you don't add those in, it doesn't sound quite right, so it's a great one to make sure you can kind of learn Wish You Were Here as well. Yes, Joni Mitchell. She did have a dynamic. Yeah, you're right. She also used a lot of alternate tunings for her songs too. I remember teaching a couple of songs. We had to retune the whole guitar into these different ways, but it was so cool because it just had her unique sound. I don't remember what the tuning was that she used on that. I think it was Both Sides Now was the song that I did with somebody. But I remember the tuning being really crazy on that one, actually. But absolutely, singing has those dynamics in it, guitar playing, drums, everything. It's definitely something that it's not hard to do, like I said, but we forget about it. Oh, this is cool too. Someone wrote, what should I work on to start being able to solo? Great question. A lot of, beginners, we start out doing a lot of songs with chord switching and everything too, and there is that natural progression to be able to start going into some solos. Now, if you're acoustic beginner, a great solo, again, Wish You Were Here has a great exercise in learning how to solo with that whole beginning. There's a lot of cool little techniques to work on with that one. But I would say when you're really starting to learn how to solo, the first thing you got to learn is a couple of your scales. Because when you do a guitar solo, you play the scale that's going to fit over the chords that are in that song. And a great little tip here that a lot of people might miss if you do know some scales, people tend to think that when you have a chord progression, let's say again G, C, E minor, D, that every time the chord switches, you have to switch the scale. That's a really big misconception. You don't have to do a G scale when the G chord's happening, and then you don't have to do like a C scale when the C chord goes on. You can actually stay at one scale as long as it's in the key of those 4 chords, which most chord progressions or songs that you're soloing over are in the same key. So you can use that same scale. The biggest, again, the 2 biggest ones you really start with is the pentatonic, the major and minor pentatonic. That one by far is the scale that if you're a beginner and you want to start soloing, that you're going to find is in every style of music, whether it be country, blues, rock, metal. The pentatonic is the foundation of so many solos like that. And the reason why is it's a scale that's kind of made for improvising, meaning that there's not any really wrong notes in there. You can't really land or hit a wrong note as long as you stay in the appropriate scale. And I feel like, again, for beginners, the physical layout of the scale is only 2 notes per string. So when you learn this pentatonic, you're just running 2 notes on every string in this very nice box formation. There's other areas you could play it, but this one particular box, a lot of the solos are written in with that. So I definitely recommend learning the pentatonic scale first, major and minor. And then once you learn that, you want to have it so memorized that you can start anywhere in the scale and move around in it. What I mean is, when you first learn a scale like that, you'll see me kind of playing in order, just like you'd hear do, re, mi, but when you start to solo, you don't want to hear the scale in order. I always joke with my students too. I'm like, when people come to maybe watch me do a guitar solo live, they don't want to see my scale. They want to see what I did with the scale, what music I made from the scale. That's the whole idea. So you have to have that scale so locked and memorized that you can go in it and start from the middle, come forward, back, zip around in it, skip to the end, make creative phrases on that. So once you become really, really comfortable with the scale forward and back, it starts to be all about how can you dice up the order of it. And that's really, again, the fun part. Once you have it so memorized like that, is to pick out some notes and really, I think, we tend to want to play one note at a time with a scale. We want to go like this, one at a time. But a lot of your best musical phrases in improvising is doubling a note. See, I'm hitting those scale notes twice like that. So if you're learning to solo, I think, one, just going through that scale forward and back, you have it super memorized. Pentatonic is huge with that. And then being able to double hit some notes to create those musical phrases, something that we don't do when we're practicing the scale, but double or triple hitting the notes like that. And then definitely mixing up the order to see about where your ear might want to take it. So here's this little example of me like using the E major pentatonic. So you can kind of see that I'm like doubling notes, sliding a little bit, adding all those techniques in, but you can't do that unless that scale is super memorized and you're really comfortable with being able to go in and out of that whole thing with it too. So, yeah, everyone. So again, this is my first time doing a live, and I wanted to be able to jump on here and do some question and answer with everybody out there. So any guitar questions, you could throw them in the chat here. Thank you for that. Appreciate it. But yeah, any questions you might have, we could definitely cover it if it relates to guitar or surfing or something like that. We can also cover that. right, so someone said about picking up their speed. How do they get faster in playing? That's another great one too. We always want to be able to play faster, and I would say I'm going to give you two techniques that I feel would get you to be a faster player, and it kind of depends. If you're thinking about where did I surf? Answer: Huntington Beach, California, is my surf spot. Usually, Bolsa Chica is my beach. When I'm there, I'm in Nashville, Tennessee right now, living, because all the music's out here, but Huntington's the surf spot. That's where I lived for a long time and still go back every often chance I can. But yeah, so the speed, there's two things that I really make sure to do. And again, it kind of depends on, are you talking about playing fast with your chord switches, or are you talking about being like fast picking for your lead, stuff like that? I would say the biggest thing to help you with your speed is to, and I know people just, hate this thought, but the metronome, okay? It's a thing that has this bad connotation to it, to where, we're used to, maybe old piano teachers with this tick thing that's on top of your piano, and you're hearing this annoying clicking going on, and it's never fun to practice to a metronome. No one wants to do it, but I look at it as your kind of meter to tell you how fast you're going and how much faster you can go and where you're at now and where you can go. I use it as a growth tool. It's great for rhythm. It's a great way to practice it too, but it can also track your progress and your speed. I had a student that used to leave my room in the lesson room, and he would say to me every week, he'd be like, "Brian, am I getting faster? Am I playing?" Like while he's on the way out the door. And I look at him and I'd say, "I don't know." And he'd go, "What do you mean you don't know? You see me every week for guitar lessons. You should know if I'm getting faster." I said, "Until we mark you playing to a metronome at this speed, and then I see you playing that same thing at the higher speed, I could safely say you got faster." But I can't if you're just sitting there playing, random stuff like that. So metronome is your way to be able to gauge it. So, if you're working on a piece that's maybe just even switching chords, let's say the metronome's going, you're going like C to D, and it's click, click, and click, click, right? And you're at maybe 50 beats a minute. By bumping that speed up and trying to keep up with that and having that feeling of the bridge burning behind you is what's going to help your speed, guaranteed. Without that metronome, without that meter behind you, it's so hard to gauge if you're getting quicker or what's going to make you quicker. So ultimately, the metronome is huge. The second thing on the speed thing is, if you're talking about single note stuff, and this even works with metronome, is definitely alternate picking. That alternate picking is, if you're picking everything down, you're definitely stunting your speed. If you think about it just, with physics, you're down, you have to come back up to go down again. So you're missing a millisecond opportunity going down, down, down like that. But when you go down up, you're catching that other, momentum coming back. And so that speed right there is going to be huge. So everything I do, with that down and up like that, it's going to help your speed. So two big things to get faster would definitely be working with a metronome to track it, to say, yes, I'm at 50 beats a minute right now, but I now got to 80. You got faster. Alternate picking, again, it's going to make sure that you're not missing any time in between those picks like that. Let's see here. Graham used to live on the other side of PCH before the condos took over. Yeah, I hate when the condos take over, but yes. Strumming's where I fail. They say it's like drumming, but I have no rhythm on that one. And Ron, I'll get to your question too here in a second. But yeah, the thing is, the strumming, I know it's like drumming like that, but that strumming too, I'll tell you. I had a student, just started with me recently, an adult student, and one of the things with her strumming was everything was so heavy-handed. Everything was like really clunky. Like she was just her pick was digging in, going down and up and everything. And the first thing we did to help her strumming a little bit was just lighten up the picking, like feather it a little bit more. And not to the whisper dynamic thing, but just feathering it. And when she started doing that, it first of all kind of like gave the up strums sounding a lot smoother as she was going up. It wasn't catching in the strings. So just thinking about it like if my finger was the string and my pick, it's just going to be going on the very top of the rounded part. I'm not digging in to that. So by just lightening up the strumming, that's where we kind of started with the sound of her strumming getting better. And ultimately, it did help with her rhythm as well because she wasn't getting stuck in there and being so heavy-handed. So again, with your strumming and no rhythm, it all starts out, man, with being able to go just on the click, put on the metronome, have it be clicking, and get that right hand to click with the metronome. And that's going to build your rhythm. That's how we're going to build it. And if you can have another part of your body going with that click, tapping your foot to the click and strumming, or nodding your head to that. That's how we're going to build rhythm, and it's ultimately going to help your strumming as well with that. All right, having trouble playing G7 and B flat. Damage done. Love that song. Yeah, the G7 to a B flat. I don't know if it's that one there. That the G7. I don't know if he's doing it as a bar chord on that particular song. I have to look up how he did that particular G7. There's two ways to do that G7 on that one to that, unless he did a bar chord G7 to that B flat. There's two different ways he might have done it. I'll give you, again, both ways that I would handle it, so I'll give you the open position of that. So that G7, it feels to me like a C chord that I just had to stretch out a little further. That's one way that I would get that G7 in my mind, how to play it. If you got a C down, you're going to just stretch it out to that 3-2 and then that one way on the end like that. And then, of course, like you said, switching to a B flat. B flat's a tricky chord to get to on that one. But what I would do is I would first start with just this. This is the almost bar chord version of it. First fret, then third fret, third fret, third fret. I'm laying my ring finger over those three, getting that B flat. That, again, can be a little tricky if you're a beginner on that. So another way to do that B flat is take your A chord and just come up and do those three strings right there. That's another way to get through a B flat. So G7 to a B flat right there with those three. That's one way easier to do it. Unless you're doing bar chords, that's not too bad of a move there, G7 to B flat. But yeah, I know when you get into those more complicated chords, that might be tricky. But that could be a workaround for your B flat, just sliding the A up a half step and playing those three, and you should be able to still hear the song. The old foot tap practice makes perfect. I'll try it. Definitely go for it. It will help. It connects. Hearing the metronome just click on its own, just clicking in the air, you're not really connecting to it. It's just this kind of moving sound, right? But when you're clicking to it, you're building that internal rhythm. That's the idea. Brian and Paul, thanks for all the vids. Huge thank you. E9th fret. Strings are on my old. Oh, I have a huge twank on my low E9th fret string. Old Alvarez. Hey, Paul. Thank you for watching. Yeah, when it comes to older strings, that's definitely my first thing I would look at. Having that kind of weird noise in there. Our strings over time, depending when you change it, our fingers just have all kinds of oil and grime, and then there's like dust, and everything just gets stuck on there. So it could be playing a role on there. It might also be not even the string. It could be, kind of like a buildup on the fretboard itself or on the actual fret. So a lot of times that could be causing it. I would definitely start with a string. That most likely would fix it. If when the strings are off, to maybe clean the top of the fretboard just to make sure there's no gunk on the frets themselves. And then your last option, if the fretboard's clean and your strings are brand new and you're still getting that sound, I would take it in to get a proper neck adjustment. That's going to be just making sure the bow in the neck is in the right spot and nothing's out of whack. Because if your neck's kind of bowed or twisted, that makes sense why maybe one fret could be pushing up on that string. But it's always a good idea to first start with the strings, just kind of doing a good cleanup on there, see if that corrects it. If not, I would take it in to, local person that knows how to do setups on guitar. Just get a nice fresh setup, and it should sound really good actually after that. But and if you don't know how to do that, I wouldn't recommend doing it on your own to start twisting around your neck and everything on that without some knowledge on that. So yeah, you're working on the bar chords, Ron. Yeah, so that's yeah, that's the if you're doing the bar chord version of that for sure. The G7 in the bar chord version is definitely tricky because your finger, a lot of people's fingers, the crease in the bottom of that finger is gonna kill and have a hard time making that D string ring. This is the G7 that you might have been talking about. That note is the hardest to do on the bar chord. So here's my thing. These creases in our fingers is where we are going to get those string buzzes and not getting our bar chords to sound right. So everyone's creases are in a different spot of your finger. So the first thing you want to think about doing is don't be afraid to overshoot where your finger lays. I know it looks picture perfect to have it lay right where the string ends, but it might be right where your crease is. So don't be afraid to try overshooting where that finger is to get that bar chord to start ringing. That has helped. I had a girl once as well, the student, I remember so clearly, she worked so hard to try to get bar chords to ring, can't get it to ring, buzz, 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 and then she pushed her finger over the top, found her sweet spot for where those creases are, and boom, it was like night and day. And she heard it ring. She's like, yes. So try that. That's a huge one that if you're getting bar chords to buzz at all like that, especially those 7 chords, different tricky. Do that movement around. Secondly, again, to avoid the creases as much as possible, is I tend to use more the side of my finger instead of this. So I know, again, picture perfect, we want to do our finger flat, but I kind of use the side. So when I do my bar chord, if you saw where the lines of the fingers are, there's almost here. So I'm kind of avoiding trying to make it on the flatty meat part, of my finger, more on the side of the, almost like the bone of your finger. And so imagine overshooting, finding that sweet spot, giving a little roll to it, and your bar chords could come to life. But that G7, if you're doing the bar chord, to that B flat, and that might help out if that was part of the issue at all with that too. Again, thank you guys for tuning in and hanging out with me. This is my first time going live at all, and wasn't sure how it would go, but I wanted to be able to come on and do some question and answers, and maybe be able to hop on weekly with you guys and see you on Sunday nights and hang out and play a little bit and talk guitar. Yeah, I was thinking an adjustment. Yeah, the adjustment could be. That's, again, as acoustic guitars, especially as they sit around over time, the atmosphere plays a big role in it. Hot, cold days, humid days, dry days. You got an instrument here that's wood and metal, so things are going to move, things are going to twist, and we just got to maintain it once in a while. That was actually one of the questions someone had wrote in too, was how do I maintain, my guitar with that? And I would say, that's definitely one is, if you're playing pretty often, definitely swap out the strings at least every couple months. I'm playing so many shows. Every 3 shows, I usually get a brand new pair of strings. But definitely keeping the strings fresh. It always sounds better. It's more motivating to play and practice when your guitar sounds good. When it's all grimy feeling and the strings are dead, no one wants to pick it up and play. So definitely maintaining that by changing your strings, I think, is important. And if you get some good ones, the ones that are like coated ones, I use these elixirs. They last for a really long time. They stay really bright. They eventually go down too, but definitely staying on top of the string changing. And then again, we're noticing again if things are changing. If your action's high, where that means where the strings are on the fretboard and they start going up high, you want to take that in to get that lowered. Again, it makes it very, very it makes it like not motivating to practice when you have a hard time squeezing those fingers down. And that could be a lot of times too what's going on with the bar chords. People say, I can't get my bar chord to ring. And a lot of times it's because of how high those strings are off there. They take it in, and then all of a sudden you can see like mine is just real low. So that's a big part of your maintenance as well. I love the fact of keeping your guitar out, on a stand, because it does motivate you to practice more. When you see your guitar there, like, let me grab it. But that does play a role into having to get more maintenance on it because it's out in the environment. When you keep it in the case all the time, definitely makes it, again, not move as much and not as, into temperature change and stuff. But so I'm kind of on the fence on that because I like people to practice and be able to see their guitar and want to grab it because it's sitting there. But at the same time, again, it's at the mercy of wherever you might live, whether it's salt air, dry air, altitude, things like that. Exactly, yeah. In a storage bin for 5 years. Yeah, that might do it as well. I'm sure that wasn't. Again, it's wood. It's definitely going to be at the mercy of all that kind of stuff. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, guys. Like I said, I'm gonna probably hang on here for another 15 minutes or so. So again, if you have any guitar questions, let me know. I appreciate you guys jumping on and hanging out. First time going live. Wanted to do a little bit of a Q&A, little jam session here, and it's been great hanging out with everybody. Well, that's a cool one. Someone says, what are some ways to color your chords? Color your chords. That's kind of cool. Yeah, if you're a beginner, I mean, just getting a chord to ring is a big deal. But after a time, when you start playing the same kind of C chord, G chord, A minor, they tend to get a little familiar sounding. Going, I want to spice up my chords. I want to get some more color to them. And one of the first things I do with my students on that is I talk about. We can get into the theory of all these different colorful chords you can do. There's millions of chords out there. But one of the things you can do to color chord is to add and remove fingers, from them. So, for example, I'm doing an A minor here. And when you take off the pointer finger, it just kind of added a little bit of color to it. So if there's a song with an A minor, I just kind of lift that pointer finger on and then threw it down. And now that added a little bit more color on that A minor. I could drop the pinky on the 3rd fret. And just adding stuff around like that. Same with like the C. I'll lift my middle finger up. Adding that pinky on that same D string. And what I'm doing is called suspension chords and all that, but it's a way to at least start that process out of your beginner and you want to add some color to it. Is take a look at that chord, taking off a finger, placing that back down. It's great to do if you're singing. You hear a lot of singers that land on a verse and then their lyrics stop for a second for a breath, and that's a great time to have the guitar respond. A little move like that too. So that's one way to color your chords. A lot of different techniques in that can definitely go very deep down the rabbit hole with coloring chords, but that's where I would begin, suspended chords. Can be saved, or should I look for a new guitar? Honestly, really, it probably can be saved. I mean, if it's just that, if you saw like a crack in the body or the neck, that might be, where you might need a new one. It probably can be saved. Also, then again, a new guitar is always cool. One of my students, he has got the biggest collection of guitars, and he always says, how many guitars do you need, Brian? I said, what? He goes, one more. So, it's definitely something where maybe a new one might be, in it for you. Might be really excited and want to play it a lot more often. But yeah. But I think it can be saved, though, if you really wanted to, like I said, just swap those strings out, take it in. It might feel like a brand new one when someone, polishes it all up, gets the neck all straight, lowers the strings, puts some new ones on. Those are great guitars, too. Those Alvarez's actually can be really cool. And I feel like a lot of guitars in that era, that 90s, like, they're using different woods back then, so it might be really, really nice sounding, actually, on that, too. What is a good way to learn chucking and muting? Yeah, that's a good one too. That kind of muting sound, that percussive. Is a great thing to do, having that sound, because it really brings some life and rhythm to the sound. But you're right, it's a little like how to get that sound. So the first thing that I think about when I want to kind of get that muting and chucking like that is to, we work so hard to get our notes to ring when we first learn guitar and put our fingers down. But to work on muting and that chopping sound, we now want to work on our notes not to ring and be totally dead and dampened like that. So that's where I would start. I'd be starting a chord, and I start with getting the sound I want, and then taking the pressure off of the strings with my left hand till I have no sound like that, and I would like that. sound, chop, sound, chop. And I would alternate that, getting that control of that hand coming off like that. Your muting can come from the right or left hand, but I think in that particular style that you might be talking of, that kind of Jack Johnson. That kind of sound. I'm just taking that pressure that's not the right hand and lightly laying on it, but I had to definitely start, when I started doing that, practice not having any sound. I've definitely had some students work on that stuff, and it's like they'll go, and you'll still hear some of the chord. So you really want to get that sound, so lightly laying over all those fingers. So practicing having no sound as much as you probably practice having sound happen with that. Awesome. Well, thanks for joining. Have a good one. Awesome. I'll probably take one more question here. Let's see. Oh, nice. All right. So someone said, how can I improve my finger picking, fingerstyle playing? That's cool. You know, I just recently posted a video of learning a few finger picking songs, and check it out if you haven't seen it already. I put Bob Dylan's "Blown in the Wind," "Brain Damage" by Pink Floyd. What was the other one I did? I can't remember now. But yeah, these I picked some songs that you can definitely do. Oh, "House of the Rising Sun," the Animals. So the finger picking thing, I made this video because I wanted to really, you know, focus on this not being so difficult, because I feel like I've watched, you know, instructions on it. It's like, it seems so complicated. And really, what I said in this video, I think sums up the best way to get better at your finger style playing is to do what I call the assignment of fingers, assigning your fingers to certain strings. And what it does is this kind of gives you a guide of, you know, how to do it. Because I feel like at first you're like, what fingers do I use where? So two things I covered in this was, one, assign your thumb to the lowest thick top three strings, the E, A, and D. Have your thumb handle those three. And then your pointer middle ring handles the G, B, and high E. And that's the first, like, most traditional way to handle finger style playing, is to assign that. This way, whatever tab or song you're learning on that, just kind of adhere to that rule with that right hand hitting those. And it just makes that a lot easier, the assignment. So to get better at that, I would practice just playing chords, going like, if it was a C, thumb, thumb, pointer, middle, ring. Just rolling it down, and then backwards. And just getting used to that idea. And a G, you know, and maybe mixing up some order, and just getting an idea of how that kind of feels on there. So that assignment of fingers was a big part that I think can help in doing that, so you just know where your thumb goes and which the pointer middle ring goes to. The second one, this is the most popular one. Thank you. Great job on building your channel. Appreciate it. So the other thing is most strumming picking patterns use a 4-string pattern. Like there's a 4-string grouping that they use. So the way to handle every 4-string grouping is what's called Travis picking. And that just means you're kind of alternating the bass, but your thumb handles the first two, the lowest two of the 4 pattern, whatever 2 they are. And then the 3rd and 4th strings of this pattern, you use your pointer middle. That's it. You just use these. You don't use your ring or pinky at all in this style. So if I'm doing like a C chord, it's thumb, thumb, pointer, middle. But the way to get better at this and kind of practice is you can kind of like pinch the A and the B together, and then thumb, middle, so thumb, pointer, thumb, middle. Kind of landslide. But that idea is having your thumb handle the bassier notes of it. So that right there is how I would first start getting into fingerstyle patterns, understand what the right hand fingers get assigned to which strings on that. So starting there is huge. And again, it depends kind of on the song, which one you want to do. On that video, if you check it out, The House of the Rising Sun is one that practices the first one where it's like, that's that thumb, the first thumb, pointer, middle, ring. So like that. Brain Damage is then more that the Travis picking. I like that too because I can kind of like, I usually rest and bridge my pinky and ring on there so I can utilize kind of some leverage to hold that as like a little anchor. I can have those three ready like that. So those are the two that I would do for sure. Awesome. Well, very cool. If there's not any other questions, we're going to probably wrap it up here. But I had a lot of fun with everyone tonight. I really appreciate the questions and the views coming in. And like I said, if you want me to do this more often, put some comments in. I'll try to jump on maybe on Sunday nights if I'm not playing a gig somewhere and jump on with you guys and answer all your guitar questions. Once again, thanks for watching, and hope to catch you soon.